but I get new things and new ideas, and so it's hard for me to weed out some of the other things. So welcome, everyone. One of the first things I like to do is always check to see if we have anyone new with us today. So let me pull up our polls and see if we have anyone new, because that gives me a different frame from which to talk. In the meantime, while that's coming, I'll just kind of start our acknowledgements, our recognitions, as soon as my computer will advance. I know I clicked, and the thing is if I click again, then it will go twice. All right. Oh, we do have someone new, so thanks for sharing. I'll make sure that we take that into consideration. And I will also then make sure to share with you a survey on the needs of the group that you can contribute to later on as well. So I do have a land acknowledgement resource for you. If you don't know where you are, I'll put this link into the chat box. It's the Native Land CA map, where you can find out a lot of really interesting things about different treaties, about different people who lived on the lands where you are now before you were there. So I'm recognizing that my region is on the traditional lands of the Nisqually, Cowlitz, and Puget Sound Salish people. I invite you to put in your own if you'd like. But I also invite us, and any resources that you have to share. I do appreciate that acknowledgement is but a first step. It does not stand in for relationship and action, but it can begin to point toward deeper possibilities for decolonizing relationships with people and place. All right, I'll give you a moment to type something in. I'll take off my background because I always talk with my hands. All right. I also start with a recognition of the pain and trauma from over 400 years of racism in the United States. I do have a Black History Month resource I'll add into the chat box. It's also a pledge to stand with our communities of color, especially those who identify as or are categorized as African American. We recognize the intersectionality of those who identify both as persons of color and individuals with disabilities. One of my favorite dyslexic poets does a lot of work on, he himself is African American, and he does a lot of work advocating, and especially during Dyslexia Awareness Month, in case you hadn't noticed, is this month. And he had, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, did a series of Black and dyslexic interviews. That was very interesting. So it's a commitment to centering our work to dismantling systemic racism and disrupting ableist structures. We'll go through our Zoom tips / reminders very quickly. I do ask that you share your name and your district, because that's helpful for giving us context. I think most people have done this already. We do have someone in her car, so of course we won't ask her to do it. But if you can access on your toolbar the participants area. And when you click on that, you can find your name, and then you can see next to your name the mute button, and then next to that is more, where rename is an option. So you could put your name, your district, so we can understand where you're coming from. The reason why I have an asterisk on that video on is because you can have it off if it's easier for connectivity, but it's always helpful for me to have some people who have it on. Thank you for, I see Elizabeth, Janice, Jill, and Kathy right now. If there are more of you, I'll have to click and see, but it helps give us some nonverbal, as well as when we're in our breakout rooms, it's helpful for people to know that you're there. Muting when not talking is the default. Feel free to unmute to contribute, question, raise your hand, and jump into the conversation. And then if you are not one of those 4, 5 that I listed, please use the electronic raised hand. It will raise you to the front, and I can actually see that you're raising your hand. And you'll notice that there are some other options as well for engagement. Okay, the view options is where you can get to the annotation. You'll see a little up here where it says you're viewing my screen. When you hit view options, it'll bring up, and you click annotate, it'll bring up a toolbar. And that toolbar, it actually, it can't tell, I don't know is yours still at the bottom, Janice, or has it become horizontal? So mine's shifted, and they're going to shift it all the time. We're going to do the best we can to keep us all engaging and annotating and writing, so that we can contribute and engage with the material. So that's the annotations piece. If you do have your toolbar at the bottom and it looks like this, then you can change what color you're writing with by using this little, this place here, which is a format that changes the color. All right, and of course, you or I can erase things at any time. So we have some guideposts that help us out. It looks like we've had some more people come in. I'm sorry, Elizabeth. So nonetheless, I'm providing lots of options for engagement. So you can use the annotation, you can use the chat, you can use activities. So I try to give, we'll be doing breakout rooms. I want to keep lots of opportunities for people to engage with the materials, because I feel like the more engaged we are with it, the more we learn. So these are some guideposts. If you see the handouts link, that will be something you can print up and take away. I have a whole folder of ADA compliant handouts that I'll share with you. There are activities and times to do either get involved on the Jamboard, on the screen, or in a breakout room. Time to reflect will always be a breakout room, but you can either reflect individually or you can go in the breakout room to talk, because some of us are verbal processors and some are not. I think it's helpful to verbalize, to internalize, but you might want to do that in the quiet of your own home, and you might want to do it with others and bouncing back what you hear. The practical strategies are something I'm trying to get more explicit about. So if you notice something that make a connection that I haven't made, please pull it out. I think it's great for us to learn from each other. And then the resources will be electronic sources that I'll be putting into the chat box. Okay, so let's hear from the people who've been here with us before. Where are you tonight? Someone we do have at least one new person. What are you connecting with? These are the teaching and learning beliefs of my agency, and I just like to always ground us back into what brings us to the work and what are the most important things that we hold its values so that we work well together. And you can tell by the colors where I color coded what's most important to me. And of course, above all, it's this big word all here that is the most important one. So I'll give you a moment to either stamp or put a word into the chat box of what are you connecting with. Several people starting with that professional development. That's why we're here, right? And we're here, we do professional development because of the growth mindset, that active engagement. Remember I said that learning is not a spectator sport, is it? Courageous leadership requires a growth mindset. Thank you, Angela. And relationships. That's one of the reasons why I love to see you and your faces and hear from you and find out where you are and what you do. So I think that's a crucial piece in what we do as well. We have someone who's come in directly to me, quality teaching. I'll put a stamp on that for you. Let's see, there's a heart. I'll add for you. Our stamp choices are check mark, an arrow, an X, a star, a heart, or a question mark. This one says professional development. And whoops, I've got that arrow going the wrong way. I'll do a star and quality teaching. You are the most important element in the classroom and your knowledge. I saw a great image once of a whole bunch of ladders in a pile and somebody trying to climb on that pile to get over a wall. I was saying that having the best tools in the world won't work unless you know what to do with them. So thank you, Val. I appreciate that. All right, so I'm going to clear these off and I'll give you 5 more seconds if there's anything else you'd like to express. Someone noted when given that opportunity, and that's what is our responsibility, isn't it? As teachers, we need to make sure we give everyone that opportunity. All right, thank you, everyone. I'm going to clear all these off. Clear all drawings, and I will get used to this new format. You'll just have to bear with me as we get used to that. I have some requests of how we interact with each other. And again, here's an opportunity to highlight something that's important to you or call out, is there something I'm missing in my request to you? So if there's something that you think is important for how we talk to each other and how we listen to each other, please put, I used to have instead of listen openly, it used to be non-judgment zone. I think that is encompassed under listen openly. Please feel free to tell me I'm wrong on that. The expect and accept non-closure I do because there's so much more to learn. I mean, I just went to 2 great conferences, the Reading League and the IDA, and I'm still filtering things, all the things I'm learning, and had a session just today online. So there's so much more we can be learning. And that's one of the things that's fun about this profession, is always more to learn. Yes. Practice, practice, practice. I think that's what we take with us, Lorna, because the ideas that I had here was as we're together, but that's an important piece as well, because that's how we get the most out of it, is to practice it. So thank you, everyone. All right, I'm going to clear that off and give you an opportunity under our introductions time. And yes, you notice, those of you who've been with us, I do shake it up a little bit by giving you different options. I'm going to put into the chat the Jamboard and different pictures. And we do have at least one person who's new. I should have asked the new person whether or not he or she has had any classes with me, because otherwise I won't bother with the introductions. So yes, all right, Christine, no worries then. So since we don't have anybody who doesn't know me, I won't take time expressing who I am, but I will tell you about the pictures you see. And on the Jamboard, if you haven't put yourself on the map yet, please do so. And you can give yourself a little bit of background instead of just your name. You can say I'm a special ed teacher, or I'm a K-1-2 teacher, or I'm a middle school teacher, whatever it might be. That could be useful for us too as we get to know each other. Thank you for starting that. So let me get on my little pointer here as far as, that's a smart pen. That's new. I don't want to draw. Oh, is that a pointer? There we go. This picture, no, I think the fading pencil might be better. Vanishing pen. All right, so this one here up in the upper left, this was a dyslexic performer. She was, I think, a dancer, if I remember correctly, at the International Dyslexia Association conference. So I asked to take my picture with her. You can see I'm a little groupie of the people whom I admire. This is totally blanking on this. This is Heather Schmidt. She runs the dyslexia support group. It's on Facebook. I think it's just a Washington Dyslexia, and everyone is welcome. Emily Hanford is the one in the middle. Was that groundbreaking journalist who Sold a Story. Previous to that, she did Hard Words. If you haven't yet heard her podcasts, I highly, highly recommend checking out Emily Hanford's work. This is Mark Seidenberg, who wrote Language at the Speed of Sight. He also did that triangle that you see me referring to a lot, with the sound, the symbol, and the meaning. That roof triangle we'll be talking about again today. And Marcia Henry, if you don't know her books, I highly recommend it, especially those of you who are teaching 3rd grade and up. She has fantastic, her book is called Unlocking Literacy. And hi, Stephanie, I'm going to go. Hill, you want to talk actually to us. I don't think that you meant that for us. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Sorry. It was
no worries. That's, like I said, correct me if I'm wrong. Marcia Henry's book is really good for the older students, because in the back you'll find lists and lists of morphemes, of Greek roots, of Latin roots, of prefixes and suffixes, and why you'd use them and what it does to the word. So really, if you're here to talk about morphology, you need Nancy's book. It's fantastic. Did I say Nancy? I meant Marcia, sorry. Marcia Henry. I think I don't know where I got Nancy on that. Okay, so I look forward to looking at the Jamboard. I used to do a kind of a fun break, a virtual icebreaker. Oh, I did it way too long. I'm going to jump there instead. Let's jump into something more fun before we go to the goals and the outline. Let's just chat out your virtual class name. How are you feeling? And what's the last food or beverage you consumed? So just getting into our right brain for a moment before we get into so much left brain of language. You always need to have a little bit of fun, shakes things up, changes the mood, and gets us primed for learning. So for me, what's the last thing I ate? Oh, I had a great lunch, and they had a vegan cheesecake that was chai flavored. So, and how do I feel? I feel happy, but a little sore throaty. That's all way too much, isn't it? Would be too long of a name. Sore throaty chai cheesecake? It's a little bit long. Let's see. Dried jackfruit. Yum. And great dried jackfruit. We've got some feeling good. Love it. A little bit of tired. Yeah, it's feeling fall, isn't it? I love a calm carrot. Calm carrots are useful. Those are fun. Thanks everyone for indulging a little bit of fun. All right, as that comes in, I'll take us to our content. Concerned. Oh, Janice, I wonder what you're concerned about. We'll have to check. I will jump us back to our outline and our goals of our session together. We are looking to deepen our understanding of explicit structured literacy instruction and how it applies to teaching emergent readers and those who struggle. And we are going to expand our knowledge of the foundational elements of literacy, including phonology we've talked about, orthography, etymology, and morphology we'll be talking about today a bit, syntax next time, semantics the following week. And of course, looking to always learning strategies to apply this knowledge to our students' reading growth. So here is the outline where we've been, where we are, where we're going. And I do want to open the floor to see if there's someone who would like to unmute and kind of process through something or question or bring up a thought from the last time we've met. I think we were just 1 week this time, but we did have a larger gap. So about any of these topics that we've talked about so far before we get into morphology and vocabulary. So the floor is open. And the practical strategy, while you take a moment to either raise your hand or unmute, is that it helps us to see where we've been and where we're going to ground us. It helps provide and set this routine. And by verbalizing something in the beginning, it might help us connect. Go ahead, Janice.
I would like to, at some point in time, learn more about expanding vocabulary, because I find, at least with my kids in comparison to the kids of today, that there is not the extensive vocabulary. And I think it's because they're not being read to at home as much as I did raising, and maybe you would see the same thing, but it might also be because of their technology and what they're focused on rather than actually hearing language, extensive language, and learning that vocabulary.
It's funny timing that you should bring that up, Janice, because I'm working on a training for Washington Reading Corps for Wednesday, tomorrow. And one of the things I'm going to be talking about is how many questions to asking when we're talking about oral language development is how many more words a high social economic status family child might hear than somebody with lower. And we're talking about thousands of words difference. And that's where school needs to be that major equalizer. And I think that it might be even more interesting if that study were done today after the worlds of texting and the parents who are giving them a device instead of having them a conversation with them. So I think that that's really a really crucial piece. I mean, so we'll be talking a bit about more of that language comprehension piece when we talk about semantics. And today is a great opportunity because too, the more we understand suffixes and prefixes and roots, particularly if we just teach our kids 10 prefixes or 10 suffixes, we open up their vocabulary exponentially. So thank you, Janice, for that. Go ahead, Amy. You're muted still, Amy.
Unmute. Okay, so today and yesterday, I've been teaching my second grade class about syllables and showing them how to underline the vowels and how to take off the endings. The light bulbs were just going on, and they were so able for all the example words to find the place to split the syllables. And they were really understanding. And I can't thank you enough, because the lesson plan doesn't talk about any of that marking. It just talks about dividing. And so by showing them those extra steps to find their syllables. My class that really is about at a high kindergarten level, but in second grade, got it. And
Oh,
I
I'm
think
so
it's
thrilled.
really helping them. So thank you so very much.
You're welcome. This is why I say all you need is a pencil. It's how do you know where to divide unless you underline the vowels? Because all the syllables are centered around the vowel sound. What I've been looking at for, and I'm not, maybe it's stuck it in here. Have I shared with you? It is. Have I shared with you the syllable slider? This group. So I know you can't see it well because it's a clear card. So I'll pull up I'll pull it up on here on the website where you can order them. I got them free as a sample from a conference that I went to, of course. But if you go to Cardinal, I have to spell it right. Cardinal Concept syllable cards. There you go. And you'll see it's a clear card. And I think you get 4 for $6. You can see it's a clear little card. And you can put it over the syllables, what they're reading. Let me do this one is best. So you can see, is the word decode or is it decode? Where do I divide that? So it's got 2 different color highlighters. So there we go. Piece of paper. So you can see the 2 different color highlighters here. So you just move it over your text. And my daughter really appreciated that too, to help her figure out where to divide the words. But again, it's all around the vowel. So thanks, Amy. All right, so let's jump in case anyone else, feel free to jump in at any time. But we're going to talk about morphology and vocabulary today because there's a lot to do here. So one of the things I wanted to raise our attention to is 39 of the 32 of you, yes, I can do math, contributed to the survey. If you haven't yet and you want the link again, just let me know and I will make sure. Oh, actually, it looks like I do have it in the chat. So let me grab it for you in case you haven't done it. But nonetheless, I think it's useful for us to see people's comfort level with and knowledge about morphology and vocabulary. So notice we have a lot more on the ones, but 4, 5, 6, 7, we have quite a variety here. So let's keep that in mind when we're in breakout rooms, that these are opportunities for us to learn from each other and with each other, especially since we don't have anyone here at the 10. But I don't blame you. This is a huge, huge concept. And understanding morphemes is something I'm always going to be learning about because it's something that it's so mind-blowing and there's so much to learn. All right. And when I say that, it's because when I see a printed word, I'm constantly changing my verbiage a little bit. So one of the most important things you may have heard me say before is that speech is represented in print imperfectly, yet predictably. I want to add the word with some variations or variably, because I want them to recognize that most of the letters in our language are what I call a foam letter. It's flexible. You have to flex it. But there is a set for variability with that. It's not like the letter S could represent a ch. It can't represent a k. It can't represent a z. But it can represent like in syntax. It could represent z like in represent. And it could represent like what's wrong. I think I said that earlier, like in sugar. It's pretty rare. So we have to think about what that variability is and help our kids understand that when you see a word, you are seeing so much more than just the sounds like you do in some languages. The print on the text that you see represents our history, our orthographic conventions. Remember last time, or I think it was when we talked about which letter combinations are allowable and which aren't. Just remember, like that double F we don't do at the beginning, but we do it at the end, right after a short vowel on a single syllable word. Those are those conventions. We don't end a word in a V or a J or an I or a U. Unless it's some weird new word. In general, those are some generalizations that we can follow. That's when we get into the etymology. We find out relations among words. And morphology is the meaningful parts. And of course, I say, let's make it plural as well. So this is my poem to help us recognize this. And Elizabeth, I see you taking notes. Feel free to take a screenshot as well. in case, and if there's any images that I go too quickly by, just let me know and I can take a screenshot for you. This is one that I made yesterday, I think, based on, I think it was Louisa Motz's book, her speech to print, her newest one. And I really like this image to help us see that when we see a word, in order to really know a word, so this goes to your point, Janice, about vocabulary. And you remember that triangle I made was really the red, yellow, and green. I'm sorry, red, yellow, and blue. It's form, it's phonologic form, it's sound, it's orthographic form, it's spelling, and it's yellow, it's meaning. So it's semantic properties. We'll talk about a bit more at the last class when we talk about semantics. But look at the morphological form. Next week, we'll be talking about syntax, but we understand syntax through morphemes. Does this morpheme make it into a noun? Does this morpheme make it into an adjective? How is it changing the word? So that is a piece of knowledge. So when I will think about morphemes, I think about meaning, but it also reveals information about syntax and how the word is used. Because no word in our English language has meaning all by itself. It has meaning in context. If you don't believe me, think about the word bat. You know what it means? But you're gonna, I see Amy saying, I know 3 different meanings for that. So that's where I say, does it mean, do I mean to bat you across the head? Do I mean to bat the ball? Or those are verbs. Or do I mean it is a thing that flies, or the actual piece of wood that I'm holding? So all of those words have meaning within context. And that's where my understanding of syntax comes in, as well as the understanding the meaning. So these morphemes are really complex with that. I do have a good article that I found on teaching vocabulary that I'll add into the chat box as well. Always interested and open to feedback on new things that I'm trying. So let me know if this works for you. Okay, in the meantime, we're going to jump into morphology. So morphemes fall into 2 categories. They're either free or they're bound. So let me start easily. That a free morpheme, it's a word. It can live by itself. So morpheme, a word is made up of 1 or more morphemes. Morphemes are the part that holds meaning. But notice how some of these on this bound side, look at these suffixes. A morpheme could be a single letter, couldn't it? Could be S is a morpheme. A is a morpheme. It has meaning. When I put them together, AS, there is a single morpheme. It's a single word that contains meaning. There was a great example I saw, I'm trying to remember who it was, on a webinar by Core. Let me put this here. Take a look at this word. I don't like it in red, sorry. Can you see the word finger? And now let's think about baker. Finger is 1 morpheme, it's 1 thing, right? But baker is 2 morphemes, isn't it? Because I can bake, I can take off that ER and it becomes something I can do. If I take off the ER of finger, I'm just lost. There's no such thing. I can't, it's not something or someone who things, like baker and farmer, all those ERs. I'm adding that ER to something, that an action I'm making into someone who does. So just a great illustration of 1 morpheme versus 2 morphemes and how that second morpheme changes meaning. Okay, so we're going to talk about each of these in turn, but I just wanted to give you a broad overview. Morphemes can either be free or bound, and free morphemes we call words. Notice how I'm separating those out into content. Those who, I'll give you a little bit more on the next slide about free morphemes, but I'm dividing them into content and function words, which have to do with grammatical. Remember, we just mentioned syntax. And then the bound morphemes are either prefixes, bases, or suffixes. I think some people call them just bases, they call them roots. I tend to use root for what is the historical origin, so that's why I'm calling it a base. And free morphemes are simply just words. Okay, so let's get into all of these. Free morphemes. Obviously, I'm calling them words. They can stand alone. You can combine them with multi other morphemes. So if I say butterfly, butter is one morpheme, fly is another, becomes butterfly is one thing, one new morpheme. I could also add lots of, I could said flying, I've added the ing, ed, etc. And here are those distinctions between the content words and the function words, those nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs. Those are easier to explain and look up the definition of than the, of, between, she, go. Actually, go is pretty easy about because except when it's being used as a helping verb. Will, what is tricky with those helping verbs. But those are those grammatical glue. One thing to keep in mind, the reason why I'm giving you this distinction is because we're going to also connect it to spelling and how we create meaning. If you think about what we were talking about last week, is that when you have a word, a content word and a function word that are homophones, this comes from Nancy Cushion White, if you ever get a chance to listen to her, she's amazing, that one more letter is used for the content word. And I'll come back to this, but I want to say why right here on the next slide. Is because in English, we write with as few letters as we can, as many as we have to. So hence we don't do that double F at the beginning because we don't need to. You can get the meaning across with just a single. And so you'll notice across the top, those are my function words, my in, for, by, to, or, but, we, be, we. They have, those are the oldest words. And then I'm going to distinguish in meaning by adding on another letter of some sort. So you notice the double N for a place where I sleep, the different kinds of fors, bys, to, etc. So this is why, again, we have that IE rather than a Y in lie, die, vi, and tie. Well, it just also would just be too weird to have that too small. LY, DY, TVY, it's a content word. It needs a little bit more. Make sense a little bit on that? To help your kids when they say why? Needs a little extra, little bit of umph on that. Okay. So let's get into bound morphemes now, because those are much more tricky than the free morphemes. Free morphemes, those are words. We got those. Bound morphemes, that's another story. So we're going to zoom into those a little bit. I do have on Common Core Appendix A. I don't know if this link is going to work or if you need the new one. Let's try it. They will talk about on page 22 some of the foundational skills. In the main doc of Common Core, you'll find morphemes under listed on grades 4 and 5, and they only use inflections as early as kindergarten. So the derivations they talk about for 4 and 5, but inflections, when you look at SES, ED, ING, EN, ER, EST, 5, 6, that's it. Those are the only English inflections. Now, that we add on as suffixes. Some of our really, really old English words, think about mouse and mice. You're not adding on an S, is it? Or take and took. That's an inflection too. It changes the tense, but we're not adding anything on like the ED or the S. We're doing an internal inflection. And that's just really, really old words that do that. Okay, let me see if this works for the Common Core for you. And if not, I will get you another one. Because I do have, oh, it might work. It looks like it might. Okay, it might be wrong. That's what I thought. We're going to go to our structured literacy resources. We have a puppy in here, sorry. Common Core Appendix A, I just got this one today, so I know this one works. I'll put it into the chat box for you. Okay, so on Common Core Appendix A, page 22, you'll have a little bit of the common, well, come on. I was able to, there we go. It's going slowly. We can explore that later. Let's get into the most common suffixes. So I'm going to give you a moment to think which one do you, sorry, not suffixes. We're going to start with prefixes at the beginning of the word. They're harder for our kids, but they come at the beginning of the words. All right. Did I go over that, talk that enough? We'll get to each one of these. This is the broad overview. So, common prefixes. This is your time to write something into the chat box. I'm gonna display in a moment the top 10. See if you can think of any of even the top 3 or 4, any come up with any of the prefixes in the top 10 most common that we use. All right, I'm seeing re, un, in, pre, prefix, im, like impartial, miss, sub, under, a. You know what, Abby? I really wish a were in the top because it is a very commonly used about, alive, awake, but I don't think it's in that many words because I don't think it's in our top 10. Let's take a look. All right, I saw sub on there. I think dis is number 4. Read number 2. What else do we have? Someone said, Elizabeth said dis, and in. She's got the top 3. Elizabeth, have you done this before? You must see this a lot. What grade level do you teach, Elizabeth?
I work with 3rd, 4th, and 5th.
So you see a lot of morphemed words. I'm
Mhm.
not sure if morphemed is a verb, but prefixed words, we'll put it that way. Any surprises on when we're looking at these? On the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about these chameleons, but you can see a couple of chameleons, the number 3 and number 5, and number 7 are what we call chameleons. Notice how it's different spellings that all mean the same thing. So again, remember I said to Janice earlier when we were talking about vocabulary, just knowing what these mean can change our kids' world so much and expand their vocabulary. And I will say, when I was doing my doctorate many moons ago, I was doing studies and looking at research, and they said most of the younger kids, the teachers of younger kids, don't teach morphemes because they think it's too hard. And most of the teachers of older kids don't teach morphemes because they think it's already been done. So who does it? Elizabeth's watching. Yeah. No. But we can do this even with some of our smallest kids. If you think of the difference between untying your shoe and retying your shoe and tying your shoe. So you can start with this in their oral language. You can talk about what it means. Let's tie it again. Let's retie it. Let's undo that. Let's take it apart. And it's not tied now. It's untied. So helping them see those in oral. Okay. I see some writing and some thinking. Anybody want to put out a notice or wonder before we move on to the next one? And I'll give you time to talk to each other soon, I promise. All right, let's get into those chameleons. Sorry about the whining dog. He's trying to get to know the cat. So notice how we have these spelled differently, but it means the same thing. You saw that listed on the last slide. Here you see some examples of them. I want you to think to yourself, why? Why have we changed the spelling? Let's look at the first one, for example, in. Why is it not illegal, irresponsible, immature, imbalance, in part? Anybody have a thought? Amy, talk about that a little more. Why don't you unmute?
It would be very difficult to say illegal, illegal. Illegal is much more of a flowing speech.
Exactly.
So it's, or irresponsible, it just wouldn't flow with the same idea. So it looks like it really, when it needs to flow with a really strong beginning sound, it just flows into that beginning sound rather than going within. You lose the N and just repeat the really strong beginning sound.
You're exactly right. Notice though that you have the before a b and a p. You'll notice that with the same thing with in and the com and sub. I think the com actually could be thought of as like collude, correct, commit, but concept. So, but notice before the and sorry, the b and the p, we have the because remember when we were learning about how to make those sounds, that your mouth goes right from b to p. They're made the same way with the mouth. Remember that If we go back to that chart, the is the stretched version, and b and p are the popped version, but you're doing the same thing with your mouth. The same thing if I have an n and a d, like in, certainly there's an n address. Where was it? I don't see one. Concept is not a really good one. But invite works, indecent would work. So you can see those, how we do with those. All right. So this is just as your older kids, helping them see the connections and meaning, even though they don't look exactly the same. I think add is one of the most interesting. If you think of, not add, it was a sub. If I think of subtract, it's under. You put the number under the other one to subtract. How useful, help them see that the prefix sub means under. And success has to do with under in some way. Suffer has to do with under. You're under the weather if you're suffering. You're under something. So support is I'm holding you up. I am under you. If you think of the supports on a building, they are under it. So it's interesting, the connections in meaning. And if you want to help your kids explore these more when they want to understand, how is that suggest? Let's take a look at Edam Online. And we'll go to, I'll leave that up so we can go to that later. We'll go to Edam Online. I'm not sure if I've shared this with you in the past yet or not, but this is my favorite site, dictionary site for learning the history of words. And so when my kids say to me, why? Well, let's look it up. Let's look at suggest. And let's look at that prefix. Let's see, from the Latin, it's placed before another's mind. It's Latin suggestus. The past participle is suggere. Let's look up suggestion. Okay. Oh, it is from sub, meaning to bring or carry. Oh, under from below was sub, and gerere means to bring or carry. And so you can see these connections. You are carrying an idea from under or below. It's not interesting. So you learn more about the history. And I think, yep. So under or below is the sub, and bring or carry is gerere. And then you can see just like gesture. So this is, you could go down a rabbit hole of learning about words. But I think it's the more we hear a little story, the way more easier it is for us to learn and remember instead of just memorizing. So did I put the Edam Online in the chat box for us? Yes, I did. Okay, good. All right, so let's jump to suffixes. These ones might be a little easier for you because especially some of those most common ones are that probably those 6 that I showed you, or at least some of those 6 from the inflections. So let's see if you could think of some of the top 10 suffixes. Ly, est, ed, esig. No one's put just the simple s. ment, est. We have es, but we don't have just an s. God, that's got to be the most common one, don't you think? NES says, there we go, Laura. She's added us on. NESSING. Let's pull them up and see who gets the closest to the top 3 are SES. We've had ED, lots of people. ING, LY, I saw in the chat. Look at ER, like remember I said farmer or baker or sing. Yep, singer. Sometimes you think of it as ER or OR. And again, I would get out when I can find my Marcia Henry book. Talks about whether it be OR or ER. ION, that ION, TION, ATION, ITION, SION. Yes, we've got lots of IONs there. IBLE, ABLE. Did anybody get that one in there? LESS, I see in the chat. And while it's really common with our younger kids, it's an easy one, luckily. It's actually not that often in our suffixed words. MENT, contentment. Again, an easy one, luckily, but not as common. Again, if you just teach your kids the top 10, look how quickly that the percentage of suffix words gets dropped off. Any surprises or thoughts on those? I had people ask me, how do I know IBLE or ABLE? Again, I'd have to find my Marcia Henry book, or I'll look it up. And for this one, I'm not going to look up on Edam Online because I'm not sure if that one's going to be useful. I'm going to look up on my other favorite, onelook.com. Have I shared this one with you all yet? I love this one. So I'm going to look up something that had, I put an asterisk, IBLE, and I'm going to sort it by commonness, and I want to filter by common words. And let's see what kinds of words: eligible, digestible. So I've got digest, and I'm just going to look at the kinds of words it has. Lots of sensible, transfusible, invasible. Interesting, lots of words there. 360 with IBLA. Now I'm going to look for the ABLA. And I'm just going to look at the kinds of words I have there. Now notice this is only finding letter strings, not the suffix. If I wanted to find the suffix, I would go to the Edam Online. But you can see the type of, drinkable. You can see the types of words. And sometimes you might have to tell your kids, yep, you're right. If I say drinkable versus drinkable, you're going to have to play with that and see. Iowan surprised us. You telling us why, Kathy? If you don't mind.
I just hadn't thought of it, and yeah, when it popped up, I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense, but I just hadn't thought of it. And the same with the leaves. I was like, oh, duh, kind of. It didn't dawn on me, especially when you said S too. I'm like, oh yeah,
The most common one.
yeah.
What suffix says. Well, let's get into some application of this. So sometimes I do this whole group and sometimes I do it small. I'm going to go ahead and take the pulse of the team because we're going to go right from this to talking about it in a pause and reflect. So would you like me to put you into small groups to kind of talk about this together, or would you like to do this as a whole group? I'm open to whatever anybody would like to do. If anybody would like to, has a preference, you can put something in the chat. People are saying whole group. All right, let's do this together. Now, I will say that we don't need to worry so much about the drawing feature. We don't need to worry about these columns. If you want to, because you say, hey, that's where I can have success, go for it. But we're really paying attention to these morpheme column. And notice how that this should actually have two sections. How many morphemes? How many syllables? So I'm going to put a line here and then a line this down this way as well. How many morphemes in these words and how many syllables? We'll talk first. And I can take anyone to unmute and try one off. Notice that we have this, if you want to try the phonemes as well. People ask, why do we have 4 or 5? Because some people pronounce the T, some people don't. N or n. So someone saying gives is 2 syllables. Sorry, 1 syllable. Yes, you are correct. The question is, how many morphemes is gives? You want to talk it through? We're starting with the word gives. Whoever put 1 syllable is correct. Gives 1 syllable. Let's see what's coming into the chat. I'm seeing 3, 2, and 4. Who wants to tell us what the multiple? Okay, we're eliminating 1. So often is only 1 morpheme, has 1 unit of meaning. A lot of people are saying 2. What are those 2 morphemes? Who would like to talk through? Because you're right. Those of you who are saying 2, tell us what they are. Someone, please. Deborah. Okay, you don't want to do it orally. That's fine.
It's give and gives.
Exactly. We have a suffix S. So we have 2 morphemes here. I'll work on that one. Help you with that, Sherry. 2 morphemes, 1 syllable.
Sorry,
Like-
I thought you were asking for phonemes.
That's okay. Oh, gives how many phonemes? G, I, R, Z. That's whoever put the 4.
Oh, 4.
I get it. So we'll put G, I, R, Z. We'll help you with that. Okay. So alligator has lots of, that's a weird one because of that or. So a, l, I, g, 8, or a, l, I, g, 8, or. So 6 or 7 or 8, depending on. pronounces alligator as 3 syllables? Oh, okay. I was curious. All right, let's look at drum. How many morphemes? How many syllables? Seeing into the chat, 1 morpheme, drum, and 1 syllable. Now, if I said drumming, now I'd have 2. Drummed, I'd have 2. Even though drummed would be an even more interesting one, wouldn't it? Because drummed would be 2 morphemes and 1 syllable still, because I would hear that drummed, which is be an extra sound. All right, we have 2 more. Peckish and liposuction. We'll start with peckish. How many morphemes? How many syllables? Lorna says 2 morphemes. What are they, Lorna? Or someone else would like to jump in?
Would it be peck-ish?
You have a suffix here, ish, like babyish, boyish, girlish, yellowish. Exactly. But let's, how many drop downs for the syllables? Peck-ish.
2.
We have 2 syllables as well. So I'm going to change this one to 2. Sorry for whoever. I don't mean to write over you, but I hope I'm helping you see. Peck-ish. All right. And found someone's got phonemes of people are saying 5, someone's saying 4. Let's try. Ish. We do have 5. We have the sh. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So again, my apologies for writing over, but I'm going to help everyone get there to the 5. All right. So the 4, Cindy, are you moving on to liposuction? And 4 what, morphemes or syllables?
I was moving on, sorry.
That's okay. Explain, go ahead. Explain yourself, Cindy. So what are you thinking? Go ahead. 4 what?
For morphemes.
What are they, Cindy?
Liposuction.
Actually, liposuction is 4 syllables. But let's think about how many morphemes. I have suck
Okay.
and I have shun, and actually lipo means fat. So there are only 3 morphemes on that one. The tion makes it into a noun. Suck has to do with the removing of the suckling. Like think of I'd have to think of, oh, wow, I wonder if it's related to success. I'm really curious now. I'm going to go look that up. But lipo has to do with fat. And people are saying, how many phonemes? L, I, P, O, S, K, Sh, Or unless you're doing shun together, which I can't, L, I, P, O, S, K, Sh, we're getting closer to 10, whoever got that run. All right, I'm going to clear these off. We're going to look at Louisa Motz's answers and see how we did. So, and then we're going to get into breakout rooms to have a conversation about these. I did click. So, yep, Louisa says 10. Notice we have the 3 lipo and then suck and then shun. I'll give you a moment to take a look at that while I make up breakout rooms. And in your breakout rooms, okay, I'll have a prompt on the next slide for you. I'll just give you a moment with this first. I'll do 4 to 5 participants per room in case people choose not to go in. And we'll do 8 minutes should be good. All right, so here's our prompt. I want you just to think about the morphemes, the bound morphemes, the free morphemes, whether they're the individual words or those parts of words that hold meaning that can or cannot stand alone. Any new learnings, anything that's been confirmed, any wonderings, have a share out in the breakout rooms. And then if you would like to, please choose a representative to share out with the whole group when you come back. So I'm going to pause the recording. Off.
Okay, got to remember to lower my hand. Did I lower it? Yes.
I
Okay.
got that. Gotcha.
Okay. So our group, we were all newbies at this, at morphology. We're finding it confusing and not easy to understand. And anyway, we're a little overwhelmed by it, but it's cool. We're excited about it. But it's so new to all of us. There was 4 of us in the group and it was new to all of us. So
You know, Deborah, it was such an eye-opening thing for me when I first started learning about them, because I had been taught if someone spells, originally, if somebody spells shun incorrectly, that they aren't remembering what it looks like. And as I learned about morphemes, I learned that no, they're not making the connections in morphemes. So
right.
if they're not connecting, for example, spelling vacation with a T, they're not connecting it to vacate. And it was like this aha moment for me. But I will say, so it's been a learning stumbling when I first started learning about and wanting to teach about shun. I'm like, okay, I'm going to teach T-I-O-N. Or I think it was I-O-N. And this was before I knew much about bound morphemes. And I said, I take action, I take off the I-O-N, it becomes act. And I take vacation, I take it off, it becomes vacate. Okay, I got this. And then I came up with fiction. I took off the I-O-N and I had fic. Like, oh, now I was stuck. I don't know what it was.
But it's so fascinating. It's
There's
really
so much to learn here.
yeah. And it just more of the history of the language too.
Oh, tremendously. I love looking at them online, and I will share with you too, one of the new ones, especially for those of you who are teaching secondary, or even upper elementaries. There's so much we can learn on morphology. It's just, this is something we can continue learning about. If you don't have this link to this, please let me know. I'll put it into the chat. But one of my favorite new ones is this science morphemes. It's huge when you talk about the history, Deborah. These are so much fun and so beautifully illustrated. But look at this: astronomy, astronomer, astral, bioluminescence, biodiversity, cardi. I mean, look at all. Aren't these so cool?
Oh, they're gorgeous.
Yeah. Think of genetic hydrogen, to make helio to sun, macro, micro, neuro. I mean, these are just so cool. And so these are just a whole bunch of, they give you a little bit about it, and then you can download them. And they just have, I was like, ooh, these are a fun find. Auto, having self, automobile, automatic. I mean, what a way to expand your kids' vocabulary is by helping them see these parts of words that have meaning.
Wow.
Calcium has to do with stone. Side, like to kill, when they talk about genocide, insecticide, germicide, herbicide, seeing these relationships, circa meaning around, trans meaning across. So yeah, there's so much we can learn here. Yeah, this is one of my other new favorites. I'll put that in the chat box for you. So thank you for starting us off, Deborah. I appreciate it.
Welcome.
Someone else would like to share something.
I find it interesting that none of this stuff is new. Like, it wasn't found and discovered in the last 5 years or the last 50 years, but we're just now learning about it. And I am like, why was this not brought to our attention years ago? I mean, there was that in our group, we talked about Laura, was it Lauren, maybe? I'm sorry if I forgot your name. She was talking about how that pendulum swing of like whole language versus phonics, and you keep going back and forth, and everyone fought about which is the best way to teach reading. But clearly this, where you teach everyone all of this stuff that makes up our words and why it is that way. Like, there's a reason why you have a silent E and the different types of syllable types. Like, I didn't even know that was a thing until a year and a half ago. And it's like all these, I don't know. I'm just like, why? Life would have been so much easier.
With you. So what I was uncovering, and I know you can't see it from here, but it's a quote from Louisa Motes that says, knowledge of lower language mastery skills is as important for the teacher of reading as knowledge of anatomy is for the physician. We have to know our stuff. And if we and how on earth can we teach it if we don't know it? And of course, that's why I say, like, I invite my kids to learn with me. It's like, Deborah, I don't know everything either, and I'm still learning. And when I said
Right.
IBL, like I need my Marcia Henry book, or I need my Dana Hanbury King. I mean, there are a lot of things that I have learned, but I'm still always learning more. And I want my
Right.
kids to be curious and not just, well, it's spelled that way because it is. Like, there's a reason for it.
Oh,
Let's
yeah. Yep. And then every time I like teach a new rule or we're working on something, then we come to a word and I turn around, look at my whiteboard and I'm like, that just broke our rule. All right, guys, hold on. We got to learn a new rule because we just broke it. So that doesn't fit. And why doesn't it not fit? So it's kind of fun to sit and learn it with kids.
Angela, that approach you just mentioned is the approach that Lynn Stone does in her book that I'm reading right now. Let me get to this here. Lynn Stone, it's called, what is it? There it is. I'm not reading her Reading for Life. It's Spelling for Life. This one. And it talks about finding those rule breakers and understanding them and exploring them and looking at all the different ways we can spell. So Lynn Stone, she's Australian. She's got Reading for Life, Language for Life, Spelling for Life. And I've seen her, some of her webinars. Just brilliant. She's the one from whom I learned there are only 6 inflections. Well, that's useful. I can only 6. That's something I can wrap my hands around really easily, like 6 syllable types. So I'll put this in the chat box for people who want to learn more about this Spelling for Life. It's another book recommendation. All right, so let's get into using them because that's where all the meat is. But if there's somebody else who wants to add something, please do as I translate. Okay. Because we only have until 6 o'clock and there's just so much we want to do. Okay, one thing, I was going to do this small group. It's in your Jamboard if you want to explore it, but this is actually kind of hard. So we're going to do this together. We're going to talk about how words change when we add affixes, when we add suffixes particularly. We've talked about the chameleon prefixes, but there are 2 kinds of changes that a word can go through when I add a suffix. And those are changes in sound or changes in spelling. Now, the sound, you can just, again, flex it and you can try it. So we're not going to spend as much time here, but we're going to think about it because for those of you who do teach older kids, we're just going to recognize and help our kids play around with these. So the first one is called syllabic regrouping, and see if you can think about why it's these examples. Prefer, preference. Prefer, preference. Does anybody pronounce it preference, or do you pronounce it preference, where that middle syllable just kind of gets swallowed and gone? I pronounce it preference, like a 2-syllable word. And you've got a syllable just disappearing there, don't you? Poor syllable. I'm going to use my little thing here, and it is our. Let me get this. It's prefer, accent here, preference. Who can identify what changes here in sound between sane and sanity? Now we do have a visual change, so I'll do that for us. We have dropped the E when we added the ITY. But what is the sound that's different as well? I see Angela trying it. This is called a vowel alternation. We've gone from sane with that long A to sanity, sanity. So we've gone from sane, 1 long, to sanity, 3 syllables now. What about this one? What's changed here? Electric, electricity. Now I'm not changing a vowel sound, am I? I'm changing this consonant. Okay, that's called a consonant. Amy says that the C has been softened. It's a consonant alteration because we've added an I after it. So it's gone from electric to electricity. And here on this last one, we're going to have a change in stress. Philosophy, philosophy, philosophical. Notice where the stress is. So that's changed. Now on this right-hand side, Notice what we've done to the base word. In this word, I doubled a final consonant. In this one, we dropped the E. In this one, we changed the Y to an I. I want you to be very, very, very conscious about these words because if you remember my journey, I started with elementary and then I taught middle and then I taught high. I taught plenty of high schoolers who learned this last one as I drop the Y and I add an I, and they would get so confused because they'd either forget to do one of those parts or it was just too much. So I've really learned that we need to simplify and use only one verb. We never drop Y's, we change them. Because remember what I said before, that a Y and an I play the same role. Is it at the beginning or the middle or the end? We drop E's, we double consonants, we change Y's. So that that clarity and language is really, really key. One other thing that we also do that we don't often think about, but look at all these K's that we are adding. Why are we adding a K in picnicking and panicking and colicky and frolicking and trafficked and mimicked? I think that whoever gave us that last comment will know. Amy, why is that K there? Angela, you're muted if you want to share up. I saw you.
So to keep the k sound rather than softening with the I after it to us.
If you put just the I, there would be picnicing, and wouldn't you? And panicing, but you need that K. This is also another one that last one we do is the F to V, like in thief, thieves, wolf, wolves, knife, knives. And this one is one that's changing. For example, roof. Some people say roofs. Some people say roofs. Elf, elves. It's just an ease in pronunciation that's made that shift. Okay. Let me move this out of my way. See if there was anything else I had here. Okay, no. So this one it's in your Jamboard, but we're going to do this whole group because it's kind of hard. I want you to say these words and think about has it changed in the sounds? Has it changed in the spelling or both? So we're going to go through each one. And if it changes in spelling, I'll do one already for you, an easy one. You should probably do a hard one, huh? Notice how sun and sunny that I have it's the sun part sounds the same, doesn't it? But I've doubled the N. So this is a spelling change. So spelling is in red. If it's a sound change, a pronunciation change, we'll put it in blue. And if it's both, we'll put it in purple. So let's give these a try together. Okay. How about cancel? Tell me what you might mean, Cherry, with cancel. Go back a slide, and then somebody else asked me to go back another slide too. Let me clear all these off so I can do that. Do you mean the double L in cancel or canceling? Is that what you're talking about, Sherry? I think so. I'm going to go ahead and guess in case. There you are. 2 L's or 1. Yes, because so what I've shared with you here, that would fall in this double final consonant. There are actually 2 parts to that. The simple first part is with 1 syllable words. Then the second more advanced part is if we have 2 syllable words. We'll get into that. That would be the double-ifying consonant word. All right. And then somebody asked about the last one. Sane versus sanity. Doesn't the I keep the A long? Well, but the A isn't long. Can you talk about that, Lorna? What you mean?
Okay, so you would have sane, and then sanity, change, you hear a sound. So I guess I always thought when you have a consonant vowel, that I, or in this case, the I would keep the A, or a.
But it becomes, it's not sanity, it's sanity. It's an
Right, right. It doesn't, right. But you would say sane, I guess, in the case of, I had another example and I lost it.
If you think of it, put it in the chat box because I'd love to explore it together.
Okay.
Okay. I'll clear all that off. In the meantime, let's see what else has come in the chapter. The long to short, long to short. All right. So somebody already put it directly to me. Whoops. I'm going to jump to the other one. Where were we? Our example when we had change or no change. This one, they said wide and width. We have a change in a vowel sound and a change in spelling. So I'm going to make that purple because we dropped the E to add the TH and we went from a long E and wide to a short, I'm sorry, a long I and wide to a short I and width. Okay, keep us going. I had red for sun and sunny. You can either write or put it in chat. Jerry, well, that's one that very often when it ends in an O, we're going to add an ES. That one, in fact, I have a book where we could get into those, but that is an ES instead of an S because it ends in an O. So just the same thing if we had a ch or a s or a z, those would end in an ES as well instead of an S. All right, let's do these together. Differ, difference. We already did that one. So that one is a blue. That's an oral sound. Propel to propeller. What did we do? Propel, propeller, propel, propeller. Notice how I don't hear a difference, but I definitely see a double L, isn't it? This is just like the one you said, somebody who had in the chat box, the word cancel. Propel, propeller, I've doubled the L because I'm adding a vowel suffix and propel has the accent on the second syllable. Okay, see what else is coming into the chat. But since I've got my red, I'll underline this one. Notice how we've dropped the E to go from combine to combination. Combine. Oh, notice also I'm going to make that purple because I went from combine to combination. So that's both, isn't it? Let's see. Another red one. Athlete, athletic. Oh, that's another purple, isn't it? Athlete, I've dropped the E, but athletic. Athlete, athletic. Personal, personality. That one's blue. I'll pull them all up and we can talk about any interesting ones we see. Extend, extension. We've talked about D to a sh. And usually we didn't do anything. This one is one that throws people off a lot. They say we doubled the L. Nope, my suffix is an ly. So usual plus suffix ly. So when people don't know how many L's in that, think about what's your base word. It's usual. And I've made it into how do I do it? I do it usually. So you're adding a suffix that makes it into an adverb. Okay, now this is complicated. Luckily, we won't have to do this much with our students. I wanted to stretch you and help you think about the complication of our language, how complicated it is. So I'm going to clear all this off, and we're going to get into our spelling rules for adding these suffixes, particularly the reds. We're going to only worry about the red ones because those are the, like I said, with the blue, with the sounds, we can play around and just kind of adjust those. So these are the rules that I would give to my kids after we've learned them. I'm going to go give you them how to learn them. So we're going to go to our handouts to do this. Let me get my mouse here. And back here on our structured literacy resources, up at the very top, there's that ADA compliant handouts. So we're going to follow that. If you need this again, please let me know. I'd be happy to put it back in the chat box. And we're going to go to the spelling rules. Now, you'll find that there is a word version and there's a Where's the PDF version? Oh, there it is. Spelling rules. Now, the reason I have this in 2 different versions is because I want you to have a copy that you can adjust and change. But it's easier for me to present with the PDF version. When I say adjust and change is when I use this at Chartwell and I would first give it to my students. I would give them a piece of paper that only had number 1 on it. I would kind of center it a little bit. And that's all we had learned so far. And we talked about this last week. Remember that double rule, FLS or Z? If you have a 1-syllable word that ends in FLS or Z, it's doubled if it's after a single syllable. At the end of a single syllable after a short vowel. So I would give them number 1 and we would work with that for a long time. Then when we're ready to start adding on suffixes and maybe having to change words and change the suffix ends of them because of our suffixes, I'm going to bring out number 2 and I'm going to say, give me that piece of paper back. You're getting a new one that has 1 and 2. And the same thing then I would do 1, 2, and 3, and then I would do 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to pause for a moment. I want you to take a look at, I'm going to bring up here all 1, 2, I want to just do a half click. Let's see if I can do that. Nope, that's not working. Okay. Oh, sorry, I want 2, 3, and 4, so we're good. I'm going to pause for a moment, let you read 2, 3, and 4. And there we go. And I want you to think about, why did I spend a lot of time on 2 and 3 before going to 4? Once you read it to yourself and look at what 2 and 3 have in common that's different from 4. So these are what I gave my kids to use. Someone's saying, please add a check. I'll put that in for you. Well, this is Ingrid, the whole thing. So what are you saying? What do 2 and 3 have in common that's different for 4? They're all about, well, 2, sorry, let me go back to that. You said it has to do with syllables. So Kathy, yes, and so 1, they actually apply for multisyllabic words as well.
I was trying to think of any words with silent E that were more than 1 syllable.
Well, I think we had some, athlete was 1.
Oh, okay, duh. Okay, never mind.
So it doesn't matter the number of syllables. Although in the beginning, I'm only doing a 1, 1, 1 and just focusing on single syllable words with that. Later on, I'll teach them the multisyllabic word because that's a little bit more complicated because it has to do with stress. But there's a bolded word that is the same in 2 and 3 that is not in 4. Angela, you see it?
It's a vowel versus a consonant in the Y.
So I used to say when I was teaching high school and we taught Shakespeare, and the question would be to double or not to double, to drop or not to drop, to change or not to change. Well, with the first 2, once I've looked at the base word and determined, is that a 1, 1, 1 word, or is it a word that ends in a silent E? My next question is the same. Does my suffix start with a vowel? Then I get to the Y change rule, and I have a word that ends in a consonant Y, so I have to decide whether or not to change that Y to I. It has nothing to do with whether or not my suffix begins with a vowel. It only has to do with when my suffix begins with an I, then I don't. Does anybody know why? We kind of talked about this a couple weeks ago, I think. Why would I not change the Y to I before a suffix that starts with an I? Now, I know a lot of people will teach this as, except for ing. Well, I say, well, what about ish or IVE? Remember, we've seen some of those suffixes today, haven't we? Why would I not change it before? Notice our example of carrying. I didn't change the Y to I. Why not, Angela? You're not muted.
Does it have something to do with the syllables? Having 2 vowels next to each other, like or where the syllables split?
Remember that the Y and the I play the same role. If we didn't change that Y, we'd have two I's next to each other, wouldn't we?
Oh,
Is it where the vowel is located in the suffix? Does that have anything to do with it?
Carrying. You know, it kind of, in this case, that Y shifts its role from carry. This is something I'm just now thinking of. My apologies. Notice I'm learning with you. So the answer I've always given is that we don't have two I's next to each other. But what I'm realizing now is the reason for that is that I've moved that word, that vowel, Y at the end of carry has shifted to a consonant in carrying. Notice how it's the Y, like in yellow. It's because it's preceding that vowel. I is making the vowel sound now. So we don't have two I's next to each other, except in skiing, Hawaii, Hawaiian, and I think someone said taxiing. But now I know why. That Y is shifting to a consonant sound, not a vowel sound. That's something I probably
ask a question on
Yeah,
that?
I was gonna say I wouldn't tell my kids that. I just tell them you don't have two I's next to each other. We just don't do it. If they
I'm not-
push, you can tell them why. Go ahead, Janice.
I'm not ready to leave carrying. So for me, you aren't really saying ying because that Y is E. Carry.
Carrying.
Ing.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not doing ying because that would be
Carrying.
ying.
You're right.
So that for me didn't do it. Sorry.
But
So-
the reality is we can tell the kids we don't have two I's next to each other. We just don't. Whatever reason we got to come up with or find, we don't have two I's. So I would spend a lot of time with this, and I'm going to explain to you show you a multisensory way of helping them through these. And I would do this with pocket charts. I would do this with paper. I would do lots and lots and lots of practice. So let me get you in. Except skiing. Yep. It's not an English word. It's Norse. Okay. So we're going to start with the word big. And I want to add the suffix ER. Whoops. So I'm going to analyze the word. First off, I want my kids to look at the word big. It's one syllable, right? Whoops, where's my one syllable? There we go. It ends in one consonant after one short vowel. Now I have to look at my suffix. Does the suffix begin with a vowel or a consonant? ER starts with a vowel. Thanks, Angela. So hence I'm going to need to double my G to make the word bigger. So this is something we practice. We practice when it applies and we practice when it doesn't apply. If I had, for example, bench, I want to make it benches. Bench is a one syllable word. Does it end in one consonant? No. So I just stop and I add my suffix on. If I had beat's a one syllable word. It ends in one consonant. After one short vowel? No, there's more than one. So I just add the suffix on. I only have to worry about this doubling if I have a one, and I'm adding a vowel suffix. Okay, here's the word, a silent E, the word shade, and I'm going to add on a suffix Y. And in this case, folks, is suffix Y a vowel suffix or a consonant suffix? Sorry, I should do it this way for you. Vowel or consonant suffix Y? Angela's right. It's a vowel because it's adding that vowel sound, doesn't it? Also, Kathy's got it and Lorna as well. Okay, so because I have a silent E at the end and I'm adding a suffix that's a vowel suffix, I need to drop the E's. Remember, I drop, where's my clicker here? Double drop, and then the next one will be change. So you see I drop the E to make it shady. And now lastly, I have my consonant Y, and I'm adding a suffix that doesn't start with an I, doesn't matter what. And remember the consonant Y, I'm going to change to an I before adding a suffix, unless my suffix starts with an I to make it dutiful. All right, now that we've practiced it and learned it, now I can put this poster up and help my kids reference, and this will be up for them to remember this base word that ends in a one vowel at one consonant, one, but we have like, again, I can have that doubling applies. Begin is the same as well. I have my base word that ends in a silent E. I'm adding a vowel suffix, I drop. A base word that ends in a consonant Y, I change it. Non-I suffix, and I don't change it if I have a suffix that begins with an ing or an I, any I, sorry. Again, base word with a vowel Y, you just add on the suffix. Feel okay with this? Ready to practice? Again, I could put you into breakout rooms, but I think you all would appreciate working together. Okay, so here are some words. These are also in your Jamboard. But we have 16 words, so it looks like about half of you, almost, not quite, will get a chance to unmute and either talk us through it or to do some writing itself. But I want you to think about not only do you double or drop or change or not, and why.
So number one is a one-syllable word, short vowel. Ending begins with I or with a vowel. So you have to double the N and add ing.
Excellent talk through, Janice. I'm going to put our double here, SPINNING, and you exactly explained why. Oftentimes people will say, I know it's a double N, but you talk through the why on that very nicely. Thanks, Janice. Who wants to try number 2? Or anyone, pick a number.
I'll take number
I'll
2.
try number 2, but I don't know if I have the right explanation. So for rarely, you would have rare plus ly. You keep it as is, just combine the ly to rare, because it does not begin with a vowel.
What doesn't start? You're right,
The
Lorna.
suffix, sorry, the suffix
You're-
does not start with the
Exactly.
vowel. Would
If
that
I
be
said
the right?
if I said rare-ish, would I drop the E?
Yes, you would. Wait.
Yes, because my
Yes,
suffix
you would.
vowel.
Yes.
Exactly. Thank you, Lorna. Cherry, would you like to try the next one?
I'll try number which? Number
Anyone
3.
you want. Anyone
I
you
guess
want.
I'll try number 3. I don't
Okay.
know.
Well, if you
Okay.
want one like number 2, you could jump down to 6.
Well,
or
I can try number 3.
okay.
Number 3 is stickiness, and
Mm-hmm.
it should have an I instead of the Y.
Mm-hmm. And why?
And that doesn't look right.
It is right, but let's talk about why.
It is right, but it doesn't look right. But anyway, it is right. And
let's look at what comes before the Y. Is this a vowel or a
because
consonant?
there's 2 consonants before the Y, so it should be an
Doesn't matter how many, as long as there's a consonant before the Y, then you're
it's
going
an
to change.
ICK, so it should be an I, and I'm not sure why. I can't
So
remember.
So we're going to go back to the rule.
It's
Ignore
like
my
a
writing here.
it's like a suffix, kind of.
Remember here, if you have a Y after a consonant, you change the Y to I when added.
Okay.
Exactly. Notice how if I have a vowel before the Y, I don't change it. They stick together. Okay?
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So let's go back. Excellent job.
I'm bad.
No, you did a great job. See, we worked together.
A lot to remember.
It is. It is a lot to remember. And this is why we're doing this really, really fast. With my kids, I do it over months. Sherry, I don't do this in the hours. We spend a lot of time with number 1, and then we'll go into number 2 and we'll spend. And frankly, when I was teaching at Chartwell, we didn't get to the Y rule until spring because we spent so much time, literally months, on the double, then the drop, and then in the spring we'd get to the change. So I'm doing this really, really fast with you. As you're adults, I think you can handle it. All right. Who wants to do number 4? Kathy? Do I double or not double that N, and why?
Double unburned?
Mm-hmm.
Not double because That's the way it is. It's not a short vowel. No, it's one syllable,
Mm-hmm.
and the root word ends with a consonant. That doesn't matter, does it?
How many consonants? So we have a one syllable word
Yeah,
ending in
and
ending in how many consonants?
2 consonants.
Two. Okay. All you have to do
Okay,
is stop
so it's the
and
111 when you double. Okay, got it.
you got two. You got a two in there. Just add your suffix on.
Yeah, I know, but I'm remembering 111. So if it had been BUR, it'd just be one. It'd be doubling the R.
Well, let's look at number 13. Goes along with what you were just saying, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So how would you do that
Double
one?
because it ends with 1. It's a vowel. It's 1 syllable and 1 R before the ED.
So you're going to get double SCARRED. You're going to double because you have a 111 and you're adding a suffix that ends with a vowel, right? This is
Right.
where people struggle between scarred and scared. Scared, you drop the E, hence you're only going to have one R in the middle. And scarred, you doubled the R, hence you have 2 R's in the middle. Same thing between hopping and hoping. Hop, we double the P, before that's what we're talking about. And hope, you drop the E. All right. Everybody feeling better? Let's keep trying them. Who wants to talk through? Joyful, do we change or not to change? Change or no change?
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Not change.
Why not, Stephanie?
I'm trying to think for a second.
We're going to first look at what comes
how to
before your
explain this, like how I know and how I would always know.
Look at number.
I think it has
Look at
something
number.
to do with the consonant and the vowel.
Where? Before what letter?
It's a vowel. It has to do with the Y.
Yes. Yep. Exactly. It does. What letter came before the Y here?
right?
Yes, you've got it. We're not going to change that OY. Just like we're not going to change an AY or an EY. We don't. That's a UY we don't do. So we keep those together. Good job. All right. Who's trying number 6? Do we drop or not drop that E?
I'll do it. You drop the E because it's a vowel suffix?
Exactly. Jillian, can I stretch you and have you look at number 8?
Yes.
Are you going to drop or not drop that one?
Oh, okay. It's going to have something to do with the fact that G is going to either be hard or soft if you drop the E.
You got it. I can't trick you.
Manageable. I don't know.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're totally right. I can't fool you. I have to keep that E, otherwise it'd be manageable. So sometimes my pronunciation need is going to override whether or not we drop or double. All right, we're getting there. Horrifying. Change or no change? Go ahead, Deborah.
Yeah, I'll do that one. It's
Okay.
Halloween themed. It feels appropriate. Okay. Horrifying. So it's a consonant Y. So we're going to drop the Y because what's following it is the ing. No, because we need the sound. Horrifying. So we're going to keep the Y.
Because my suffix starts with
ing.
any I.
Any I? Doesn't matter.
Any I. Yep, because you're not going to have those 2 I's next to each other, remember?
Mm-hmm.
So if it were horrify-ish or horrify, I think of another one, the IVE, ING, ISH, there aren't that many I ones, but you are correct because you have a consonant before the Y. So I do want to work on your language though, Deborah. We never drop Y's, we change them.
Change
And
them.
actually,
Okay. So
When
in
I-
this case, we didn't change them.
exactly. So when I said I do them with pocket cards, I actually have cards where it's a Y on one side and the I on the other. So the E they take away, they add a consonant, but this one they actually change. They really like doing that too.
Okay.
Okay, excellent job. So we'll do these a little more quickly because we are coming close to time and I want you to have one more processing time. Fretful, double a T or not? Jillian saying yes to double. Why? What does your suffix start with? Kathy, you're nodding. Tell me why.
I say no, don't double it because the consonant, the the suffix ends in a consonant.
And if I said fretting, would I double or not?
Yes, because it ends in an I, or the suffix starts with an I.
Which is a vowel.
Yes.
It takes a while to get this to roll off your tongue easily.
Yeah, I starting to get tired. Now go my lights again. My lights turn off after I haven't been moving.
You need to stand up and move. All right, provider, double, we drop the E or don't drop? That one's a pretty easy one, right, everyone? We're going to drop it, right, Cherry? Because why? What does my suffix start with? A vowel, right, Cherry?
You
So
can't
I'm going
have
to
two
drop that
E's.
one. Exactly. All right, glorify to glorification. Do I change or no change on that one? Change or no change?
I'll take that one. It's, you change the Y to I.
Exactly. Because there's a consonant before your
Because
Y.
it got a consonant before it and one after it.
Excellent. Exactly. Examination, we're going to drop the E. Requirement, we're going to leave it because MENT starts with a consonant. Signification, just like glorification, we're going to change it to an I. And sprightly, we're going to leave it because our suffix begins with a consonant. Complex, isn't it? We may know it, but it's important to know the why, because then we can attack any word that follows this same pattern. Okay. I have a pause and reflect, but I want to give you a couple of other etymological pieces first. And then I'll give you some food, a little bit more food for thought. You probably don't want more food for thought, do you? We've done a lot. So I'm going to actually go to our Jamboard and give you some things to talk about when you go into your breakout room. So you'll notice in our Jamboard, we have a couple of things to think about. One is a parking lot in case there's something that you don't want to put into the chat box, you're welcome to put here. A reminder of our structure literacy format. And I put this question about multimorphemic you can look at. These are the ones that we've already visited, the change or no change, and this practice that we just talked about. So I just want people to get a little more comfortable with these rather than get into the historical influences and some etymological roots. I could probably talk about them a little bit afterwards. I want to give you some practice, though, with these morphemes because it's a little bit complicated. So if you want to have one of these per group, you can make a copy up here. We see those little 3 dots, or you can just choose words that other people or just have a conversation about it. So I'm going to pause the recording